Morning and welcome to Webinar Wednesday, NIFA's virtual series specifically designed for Nebraska communities. Today's topic is a future in farming. My name is Dudley Beyer, Agricultural Programs Manager for the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority. I think we have a really well-rounded ag panel today. Our presenters are Neil Kaiser of Adams County Bank, Lance Atwater, a farmer and Nebraska Farm Bureau member, and Jill Heemstra from the Northeast Community College. A few housekeeping things here. If you have questions for our speakers, please use the Zoom's question feature, not the chat, to input your questions, and we'll hold those until after the presentations. Please feel free to use the chat for your own discussion and questions for each other, and the question feature for anything you'd like us to ask the presenters on camera. If you prefer to ask your question out loud, let us know your question and we can unmute you. Oh, so let me also mention that joining us in the background is NIFA's John Turner and Joe Spitzen, who will be the people behind the scenes helping us monitor the chat and coordinate those questions. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel at NIFA Housing. You can find a link to our YouTube channel on our website, nifa.org, under Community Development and Trainings, and Community Development Trainings and Webinars. So thank you again for attending, and let's get started. I'll speak first, and I'll say that I think it's really important for beginning farmers and ranchers, or farmers and ranchers in general, to have as many tools in their toolbox as they can to have a future in farming. And so let me share my screen here. We would like to think that one of those tools is our Beginning Farmer Rancher program, which I'd like to give a very brief overview about. So the purpose of our Beginning Farmer Rancher program is to enable beginning farmers and ranchers to receive lower interest rate loans to purchase land, breeding livestock, and equipment or machinery. And so how are we able to do this? If the beginner and their lender that they find run that loan through our program, we're able to give that lender tax-exempt interest income on that loan, both state and federally. So that's how they can give that reduced interest rate to that beginning farmer or rancher. And what can you purchase using our Beginning Farmer Rancher program? Land up to $575,400, and also permanent ag improvements, such as affixed buildings or dirt work, or just any kind of new ag-related construction. And used equipment and machinery and breeding livestock, we can go up to $62,500 on those types of items. And keep in mind that an already completed purchase transaction can still use NIFA's program after the fact if you come to NIFA within 60 days of that purchase transaction having occurred. So the borrower's eligibility. Obviously, the loan proceeds must be used for an agricultural purpose. Their net worth currently can't be more than $500,000 as they apply. They cannot have already owned a substantial amount of farmland. And what that amount is they can't have exceeded more than 30% of the median size of a farm in the county in which that land is located, if they have owned some land previously or currently. So it varies by county. It's based on ag census data, and all of those limits are on our website, nifa.org. And they also must be materially and actively participating in the agricultural operation. As far as lender eligibility, any lender can participate, Nebraska or non-Nebraska lenders. There is no sign-up necessary for our program. The lender can even be a private seller lender doing a land contract with a beginning farmer or rancher. If there is a house or a garage on land being purchased, that doesn't shoot down the ag deal by any stretch. Often Farm Service Agency is involved in the loan with their loan participation program, where they come up with 50% of the funds the beginner needs, and then a bank using NIFA's program comes up with the other 50%. And so that 50% coming from the Farm Service Agency can be applied towards the purchase of the house or garage to still keep everything in one ag loan deal. If Farm Service Agency wasn't involved in the loans, you still have NIFA's home ownership program to go to see if you would qualify to purchase the farm home under those guidelines. And so the financing process, the lender and the borrower negotiate all the loan terms between themselves. The interest rate must be below the lender's normal rate, but we don't dictate how far below. It's negotiated between the lender and the borrower. The loan cannot exceed 30 years in term. And again, remember that NIFA's program can be used in conjunction with the Farm Service Agency Loan Participation Program. So then step 2 is the lender and the borrower submit an application to NIFA, and we will issue an internal document called an intent resolution if the loan application is approved to proceed. And then that loan can close as tax exempt shortly following the date of NIFA's next board meeting. And an interim loan can be done if the beginner and their lender need to close sooner than NIFA can be ready. So what gets the ball rolling is, of course, submission of an application, our application, the official action certificate, that's information about the borrower. It's just a 3-page document. And we have a 1-page document called a loan submission voucher. There's 2 different types, the lending institution type. And then, as I mentioned previously, the lender might be a private seller lender doing a land contract with the beginner. And that would be, that type of loan submission voucher would be used in that type of case. And of course, all these forms are available at nifa.org and can be completed electronically or done by hand. Here is information about myself and NIFA. So I hope that gives you a good overview of NIFA's Beginning Farmer Rancher program. And I'd like to move on to our first speaker today, Neil Kaiser, the Executive Vice President at Adams County Bank. Take it away, Neil.
All right, thank you, Dudley. Yeah, as Dudley said, I'm with Adams County Bank. We're a community bank headquartered in Kennesaw, Nebraska, which is situated kind of in the middle between the Tri-Cities, about halfway between Kearney and Hastings. And we do have one branch location in Juniata, which would be between Kennesaw and Hastings. And yeah, as a community bank, we find ourselves trying to help anybody and everybody that's in our area with whatever their projects might be. But the fact of the matter is we're in ag territory, and so the vast majority of our business on the commercial side is ag related. And so we get very involved with trying to help beginning farmers get started and grow their operation. I think I find a lot of our value can help in farm transition from one generation to the next. That's I know a concern on lots of people's minds is to keep the farm in the family, and I think that's a very admirable desire. And so we try to help in whatever way we can. There are a lot of programs available to beginning farmers through the USDA Farm Service Agency. They have their farm ownership loans. They do make direct operating loans or guaranteed operating loans. And I would say from that respect, I mean, they run their programs and the borrowers need to work with them in most cases to do that. However, I find that we really come in almost all cases in kind of a consulting and a coaching role, because a lot of times the FSA office is going to ask them for things that maybe they don't have at the tip of their fingers, or they don't know exactly what they need to provide. So we help a lot with those situations where we've got a borrower that long term is going to be a good borrower, a good farmer, and we want to cultivate that relationship. And if that means we do some consulting on the front end, even if they're not necessarily borrowing through us right out of the gate, that's quite all right. Another program that's um, that I guess we recommend a lot. Again, it's not a program that we facilitate, but that I think any young beginning farmer needs to know about is the Next Gen program, which is offered through the state of Nebraska. It's a program that's geared towards trying to facilitate, again, that generation transfer, whether it be relatives or non-relatives, but it's a program that incentivizes landlords, whether that be a retiring farmer or just an investor landlord, but it incentivizes them to rent farm ground to a young beginning farmer. I would recommend anybody to go out to their website, which is nextgen.nebraska.gov. It's fairly simple, the benefits and the eligibility requirements, but in a nutshell, the program allows a landlord and a tenant to enter into a 3-year lease agreement. And for those 3 years, there's some benefits to the tenant with respect to personal property exemptions and those types of things. And then there's an incentive to the landlord that they get a real estate tax credit that's a percentage of the rent that's paid. So it's I believe it's 10% on a cash rent basis, or 15% of the gross crop on a share basis, and they get that for the 3 years of the lease. And I think that gets used in a couple ways. I think in some cases that gives the landlord the ability to maybe rent ground out to a tenant at a little bit of a reduced rate if they want to, and they can utilize that tax credit as a way to still make themselves whole compared to renting that to a tenant that doesn't qualify for the program, or in a real competitive bid situation. It would give that tenant the ability to go and offer the landlord maybe the same rent that another farmer might, but they can add that value and say, on top of the rent, you'll be eligible for this real estate tax credit as well. So that's an excellent program that, again, it's through the state of Nebraska, that any young farmer who qualifies, I think really needs to take a hard look at that, whether it's ground they're renting from a relative or from a non-relative. With respect to the NIFA program, I would say don't necessarily use it on every farm purchase case, but we certainly look at it on every farm purchase case. And if our borrower qualifies, we're pretty adamant that we fill out the application and try to do it in that way. As Dudley said, the program can be used with or without an FSA program. I don't have exact numbers, but I would be willing to guess that 90% or more of our NIFA loans are made in conjunction with a farm service loan as well, farm service agency loan. The benefit is the reduced interest rate. As Dudley said, the bank has it's at our discretion, kind of where to set that rate. It has to be below our standard rate, but it's at our discretion. I would say our practice is to try to pass on as much of that savings as we possibly can. It can get a little complicated projecting out on a 20 or 30-year loan what the benefit is going to be over that whole time frame. So there's probably a little room there that we leave ourselves a little buffer. But that being said, we pass on as much of that interest rate savings as possible to the borrower. And as Dudley and I were talking about this before the webinar started, in the low interest rate environment that we've been in here recently, the benefit has gotten shrunk down a little bit. But that being said, there was still a benefit, and for no more work than it takes to get it, I still think it was well worth it to go try to get approved for the program. As we see interest rates rise, we're starting to see that spread between what we could make the loan to a traditional borrower versus a NIFA borrower starting to spread. And so we're going to start seeing that benefit grow. And with the current environment we're in, land values are high, relative to 10-year averages. I'm not going to try to make any projections as far as where they're going, but I'll just leave. Land values are high, so any leg up that a young borrower can get to try to give them the ability to go buy a farm, is going to help. We have the ability to use the NIFA program, whether it's a fixed rate loan or a variable rate loan. I started with our bank in 2010, and at that time, I would say most of the NIFA loans on the books were variable rate loans, and that benefited borrowers as rates continued to drop. I would say more recent history, almost all of them have now been on fixed rate terms, borrowers trying to lock in that interest rate for long time frames. But it can be done either way. Yeah, I mean, that, again, I tried to run a quick example before the webinar started here to give myself a few numbers to share, and this is nothing specific to any case. But when I sit down with a young farmer who's trying to determine whether it makes sense for them to try to purchase a farm or not, sometimes the numbers get so large that it's really hard to even, put it in perspective of what we're talking about. So in many cases, what we like to do is try to break that down to just on a per acre basis. What's it gonna cost you to own this farm versus maybe what would it cost you to go rent a farm? And that gives them a lot. That puts it more in perspective of, oh, this is a really high price purchase or project or not. And it's pretty simple. But if a person sits down and says, okay, I'm gonna spend this much an acre on real estate taxes, and that's kind of out of my hands. And if I'm doing the beginning farmer program with the FSA, I'm going to put 5% down, but then I'm going to have 1.5% interest on the 20-year loan through the FSA office. So I can figure that on a per acre basis. What's my interest cost for that loan? And I always just usually look at that first year, and then I can look at the rest of it's going to have to be financed through some other lender, and we hope it's your local commercial bank. But we can figure out then what that interest bill is going to be on a per acre basis for that loan. And the example I just ran, I came up with, because of the NIFA benefit, that borrower was able to save about $75 an acre in that interest bill. Okay, and so if you're looking at if you're comparing it to what's it going to cost me to rent a farm? Well, if you come up with your real estate taxes and your interest number, and that's $400 an acre, somebody might say, no, I probably wouldn't go try to rent a farm for $400 an acre right now, or maybe I would. But if you can put that benefit in there and say, okay, what if you could save $75 an acre in year one, and that number is more $325 an acre, maybe that makes it a lot more attractive and a lot more feasible. And so those numbers, there's lots of variables there. So, that's not a fixed number, but that's kind of how we approach that or look at that to one, see if the project makes sense, and two, to really see the benefit of that reduction. So Dudley, I think that's all I have to share at this moment.
Dudley, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you for those insights, Neil. Next up, it's Lance Atwater, farmer, and if I have this correctly, you're the youth at large board member for the Nebraska Farm Bureau.
Yes, that'd be correct.
Okay, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Dudley. And it's a pleasure to be on with everyone this morning. And a little bit of background on me. I serve on the Nebraska Farm Bureau Board of Directors, where I represent our young farmers and ranchers, and then serve on the state Nebraska Farm Bureau's PAC committee. And then outside of serving on Farm Bureau, I'm past president of the Nebraska FFA Foundation, and then with that, my family and we grow corn, soybeans, popcorn, non-GMO white corn. And then my wife and we have a son that's going to turn 2, and hopefully will maybe be the 3rd generation to take over the farm eventually. So when I heard about participating in this webinar, it really connected some dots, because I'm an example of the beginning farmer rancher loan program. About a few years ago, there was a quarter that came up in our area that was for sale. And my dad had always said that, if that farm ever came up for sale, he'd be interested and want to purchase it. And so when it came up, we kind of started looking at this farm, looked at how it would fit into our operation. The wheels kind of got to spinning for me of, hopefully, I'd like to be able to buy a piece of ground at some point. And so then we went into it. My parents bought an 80, and then my wife and we bought the other 80. And one of the ways we were able to do that was through the beginning farmer program. And so how I worked through it was, I did half of it was through FSA, and then the other half was through my bank. And then the bank, as Neil had mentioned, used the NIFA program. And that really made it work for a young farmer like me, be able to afford this farm. Because the biggest thing for young farmers nowadays is, one, you got to have access to the land. You got to have access to capital for purchasing ground, renting ground. We know what inputs have done over the last couple of years. And then the third thing is equipment. You have to be able to have that equipment to either feed the livestock or to be able to work the ground. And so this was a good opportunity for me to be able to be able to purchase a farm and be able to make it work so that I could afford the interest rates. And so we were able to, through FSA, lock in, I think for me, I think it was a 20-year, we were able to lock it in for 2.5% interest on the FSA side. And then on the bank side, after going through filling out the paperwork, working with my borrower. And it's ironic, the bank that my family's banked with for over 30 years is Adams County Bank. And so we have a really good relationship with them. And working with my banker at the time, we walked through that process of just filling out the paperwork and being able to get a lower interest rate on the bank side of that. And I ended up fixing my interest rate, which I'm glad I did now, looking at where interest rates are going. And it was an opportunity for me to not only purchase a farm, but be able to start building equity as a young farmer, because that's the other thing. Young farmers don't have a lot of equity. You are basically starting off having to borrow money to either purchase those inputs, to be able to rent that ground, to be able to get equipment. And so the biggest struggle young farmers face in a very competitive environment. I mean, everyone wants to be able to grow their farms, whether you're an older farmer or you're a younger farmer. Everyone's looking to be able to try to grow or expand for better opportunities. And so this was able to allow me to be able to do that, to start building equity and be able to purchase a good farm at the end of the day. And I think that's what I'm appreciative of with NIFA, is continuing to provide those opportunities, because we see the number of young farmers, they're not, the pool of young farmers isn't really growing rapidly, because at the end of the day, it is a very capital intensive industry, and it's very hard to get into unless you have a connection with your family farming, a retired farmer that's looking to retire and wants to be able to hand off their farm or ranch to a younger person. And so being able to have programs like what NIFA offers really is helping young farmers like myself be able to get in, get established, and then hopefully make a lifelong career out of this, to be able to grow commodities for communities, state, nation. And as I mentioned, I mean, the agriculture industry is really changing. There's a lot of challenges. From the Nebraska Farm Bureau perspective, serving on the board, there's a lot of opportunities in agriculture, but we do have a lot of challenges coming ahead, whether we're dealing with trade, we're dealing with policy coming out of DC, such as, there's talk about here just a few months ago with DC wanting to do away with stepped up basis, which could really have a major impact on young farmers like myself, who potentially will someday inherit the farm, or parents will pass that down. And so it's really important that we have programs like NIFA, but we're also paying attention to the big picture of some of the things that can really impact young farmers and ranchers' financials as well. With policies coming out of DC, or sometimes even our own state. And so that's a little bit of a background on me and how I use the NIFA program, the beginning farmer rancher loan program. I encourage any young farmer. It's worth the time. I mean, I'm not going to deny going through FSA and just all the paperwork. And, when you're looking at a $500,000 purchase and you're, in your late 20s, that can be a little nerve wracking. And at that time, when I did the purchase, I mean, we were looking at $4 corn, and that's different than where we are today. And I always remind myself, but also remind others, that agriculture is a very cyclical industry, and we're not going to always have great times. We're going to have highs, we're going to have lows. And so it's sometimes figuring out how you're going to manage those low times. It's not really always focusing on the good times, but how am I going to survive? How am I going to perform when times get challenging and stuff? And so being able to lock in interest rates, being able to take the opportunities that programs like this provide really do help young farmers at least have a path forward, and can take some confidence in being able to purchase a farm or purchase equipment or livestock, and hopefully be successful as they move forward and make a lifelong career out of it, and potentially pass that on to the next generation, whether that's their children, or maybe it's a relative, or maybe it's not even relation, but just giving the next generation a good opportunity to get a good start. So that's what I got.
All right, thanks, Lance. And I know we're not supposed to ask questions until the end, but real quick, because I know I'll forget. When I'm sitting there in my local movie theater having nacho chips and cheese or popcorn, one of those has a real good chance of maybe coming from you.
It does. Yeah. If you're having nachos, our non-GMO white corn goes into, a lot of it actually goes out to California, but I know the company we sell to, they also supply for the Denver Broncos stadium, the company that makes the nacho chips there. So if you go to a Denver Broncos game, could be. And then the popcorn that I grow goes into Orville Redenbacher with ConAgra. So if you're going down the grocery store and you see that Orville Redenbacher, you pick up a box, there's a chance it maybe came from my farm. So yes, thank you.
All right, thanks, Lance. Next up is Jill Heemstra, who is the Ag Program Director for Northeast Community College.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me on here today. I get to talk about beginning farmers at the very start of their careers. Here at Northeast, we have several campuses. Our main one's in Norfolk. We also have satellite campuses in West Point, O'Neill, and South Sioux City. I put what's on your screen right now is a list of some of our degree programs that we have in agriculture. Right now, we have about 250, it's over 250 ag students in our programs. And you can see we offer several different degree programs there, all the way from ag business, diversified ag, mechanized ag, and we even have a new one, which is kind of exciting, in urban agriculture, where we're looking at, a smaller scale, intensive type production, fruit, vegetable, orchard, some of the smaller animals, and those types of things that can be done on a smaller land base. And a couple that aren't on here are natural resources. We also have a horticulture and golf course management program, and a veterinary technology program as well. And we're really excited about the vet tech program because they recently opened a new building, and it's a really amazing facility for training our future vet techs. I would say the vast majority of our students, when you ask them what their career goals are, they either intend immediately after they're done here at Northeast to return to the farm, or they're getting a degree that allows them to work in the ag industry while they wait for that appropriate point in the succession or transition period to take over the farm eventually. So there's a lot of different options there. So I was really excited to hear about some of these beginning farmer loan programs, because we have a large group of young people here who need to hear about these opportunities for them that can help open some doors. And, access to land, as we know, is kind of the biggest barrier to actually moving into a farming situation. One thing we're really excited about here at Northeast is we just recently opened, in addition to the vet tech building, a new feedlot, large animal handling facility, the Ackley Family College Farm facility. And this is a picture from the first class ever held at the new facility. We had an animal science lab out there just a few days ago. And together between the vet tech and this new facility, that was a $20 million investment from the people of Northeast Nebraska to invest in agricultural education here at the post-secondary level at Northeast. And so we are just so grateful to have these kind of facilities. It's much safer for our students than the old facilities were, but it also opens some other doors. I showed you those degree programs, and that's what people think of first with Northeast is our degree seeking students. We also have a lot of opportunities outside of degree seeking areas. We work with workforce development. So we're in the process of trying to design a program for feedlot pen riders to gain skills, because a lot of the people coming in and working at these feedlots don't have a lot of experience with large animals. We're also working on a chemical applicator apprenticeship with some local co-ops. So it does go beyond just the degree programs. We try to really help people get some kind of skills to keep them in the ag industry. And again, a lot of them really do want to be part of their family farm or farm on their own in some way, but see a need for working while they're working toward that goal. We use our college farm pretty extensively in our curriculum. Oh, and it probably, sorry about that. I think it switched. I'll just leave it on this view then. We have about a 500-acre farm. Half of it's pasture, half crops. And the old farm operations is over here up in the kind of upper left of the section. We are in the process of moving everything from there over to the new farm operations, which is in the lower right. And that's been, it's in progress right now. We've got about half of our animals moved. But between each field you see here has an industry collaborator involved in what we do on that field. And to be a collaborator with us, you're required to have some kind of an educational slant to what you're doing. And so we're having a field day here in late September where each of our field collaborators is going to do an activity with students out in that field, showing what they've learned. For example, we've got a strip till versus no till type demonstration area, and they're getting ready to dig a soil pit so you can see the soil structure in each of those areas. And we've got others that emphasize some of the precision ag. We've got soil moisture sensors. There's a lot of data that we're collecting. We're in the process of converting our cattle herd over to more electronic data gathering so that our classes can utilize that information in their curriculum. Let me see. We've got around 55 cows. We finish any animals that we don't select as replacement heifers. There are some pigs and lambs and a small number of horses that we use for the livestock judging team and the vet tech program. We are looking at ways that we can provide education around swine production and possibly even poultry production for our students without necessarily having to build a facility here. Just as you know, with those two industries, the biosecurity concerns are pretty significant. And if there are ways that we can partner with others to actually get more experience, more comfort with those industries as well, we're in the process of looking at ways for doing that. We really see the urban ag program as having the potential to reach out to a type of, our non-traditional farm or ag students. As you know, recruiting students here is the pool of our traditional ag students is not increasing. Our smaller towns, our farm families, there are fewer and fewer of them. And so when you look at the urban ag program, there's a lot of interest in that from people who are going to be first generation farmers. And that's an area where we feel like you can bring people into the industry and eventually grow a new crop of farmers, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. So there's a lot of different parts and pieces going on. You may see over here on the left side of the picture, one of our fields on our main campus actually has the outline of a hawk on it. That was done with our one of our precision ag classes, wrote a prescription using 2 different varieties of soybeans. And late in the season, when the early season soybeans started to turn color, you could see the outline of the hawk. So that has been a fun activity that the precision ag students can do, learn about writing prescriptions and actually be in the field using the planter. And we see a lot of growth in that precision ag area, the need for data and technology. I keep telling people that there is no place in the world where you will see more technology in use on the ground than on your typical farm. I have no idea where people think farmers are backwards or don't know much, because you have to know a lot to be a farmer right now. So I'm really happy that I'm learning more about the NIFA and the beginning farmer loan programs there, because I think we're hoping to be able to connect some of our students with these opportunities and, keep Nebraska agriculture going the direction that we all hope it does.
Okay, thank you, Jill.
Mhm.
John and Joe, do we have any questions hanging out there? I have
We
a few
do
of my
have a
own.
question. Yes, sir. One came in asking if a young farmer is interested in using the NIFA program, where do they start the conversation, with their banker or NIFA or somebody else?
It could end up being either. If they come to me first, maybe they need to know what the rules and qualifications are, and I would go over all of that with them. And then they could say, well, who can you point me to a lender? And I can point them to examples of lenders that have used our program. If they talk to a lender first, it's probably going to matter whether or not that lender has ever used our program before. If they already have, they're going to know what those qualifications and requirements are, and probably sit right down with them and get going on the application. If that lender has never used our program before, have them give me a call and I can walk them through how the program works, make them comfortable with it. So that's how I would answer that question. I don't know if you have a different take on it, Neil.
No, I would agree with that. I would say, at least in my experience, I've always been involved on that initial conversation. And that's probably a little bit of a function of, I think in most cases, we're probably the ones that suggested the NIFA program to our borrower. We might have somebody come into us trying to determine whether it even makes sense for them to purchase a farm or not. And in most cases, they're not aware that program even exists. But back to the, specifically to the question, if they know about it and they're wanting to know, more information or to start the ball rolling on figuring it out, either way would be fine. I think eventually though, then they're going to have to sit down with the lender because there's some things to work out and to take care of that are separate from the NIFA, whether you're using the NIFA program or not.
Is that the only question from the audience, Joe?
That is the only one that has rolled in so far. Yes, sir.
Okay. I have my own question here. I've never really been exactly sure what urban ag farming is. Maybe this is a question for Jill. I mean, is it just smaller scale farming? Is it fruits and vegetables? What is it?
Yeah, and that's something that we even continue to have discussions on today, is whether, calling our new program urban ag is the right name or not. But yeah, it really is looking at, the inspiration for these types of programs really was what you see in some large cities where there's vacant lots, places where people are trying to convert that to something useful, to community gardens, to fruit and vegetable production. And so what we have on our site here is the area selected for it was at one time an area that had a lot of buildings, and it showed in the soil samples. There was a couple of soil samples that we took that were more brick than soil. But yeah, the intention on the urban farm is to have bees, to have an orchard, to have raised beds, community garden space, row crop, fruit and vegetable type production. Also, I think they're looking at either chickens or potentially another small animal to have an animal component to it. Looking at a lot of programs, for example, like a community supported agriculture type operations, marketing through farmers markets, and those kinds of options are all pieces that we're looking at. So yeah, it is a smaller scale, small acreage, areas that may not have ideal conditions to start with, and really looking at more of a, not necessarily more, but looking at a real direct connection between that farmer and the customer. So there's a lot of marketing and ag business skills that are going to be essential in a program like this as well.
Okay, thank you. Again, this is another question that maybe is for anybody. Are you seeing those beginners, any more beginners trying to get into any of the non-traditional types of agriculture? What comes to my mind is things like hops and grapes, or is it largely traditional large scale agriculture going on in Nebraska?
If nobody else wants to jump in, I'll start. I think we do get a lot of our students that show up thinking corn, soybeans, cattle, pigs, the traditional types of operations. But we do have quite a few that when you talk through what they're doing, they do explore and are open to some of these less traditional either methods or crops or products that they haven't thought of before. And that's one thing I think our ag faculty really pushes the thought process a lot on, is have you considered how you will take your own job back to your family farm? A lot of families just, think that you can fit another generation on this farm without thinking through, where's the extra income going to come from? Can it really support that? And our faculty does a lot to challenge students. What is going to be your job? How will you create your income stream on that farm? So I think it's a slow process, but there is a surprising amount of openness to some of these non-traditional approaches and products.
I was going to add to that, being with Nebraska Farm Bureau representing our young farmers and ranchers, you're seeing a lot more, even within our own membership, you're seeing a lot more younger farmers. Maybe one, their family doesn't have a large enough operation that allows them to come back into it right away. Or two, maybe their grandpa farmed or great grandparents farmed, still have some type of connection, but don't have that close connection to the farming. And so you are seeing a lot of young people work an off-farm job as their main source of income, but then are going out, buying 10 head of cows to run a cow-calf herd. Hops, when you mentioned that, Dudley, hops, I do know people that are looking at getting into hops. I know people that are looking into starting their own distillery and try to use maybe some of their corn from their own farm. And I call it that niche market. And I think that's what you're seeing younger people want to get into, is that niche market. That's like, for me, instance, we're a good, decent sized farm where we grow corn, soybeans, popcorn, non-GMO white corn that fortunately I'm allowed, it worked for me to come back into our operation. But there's even that within me, that it's fun and exciting to grow a commodity that people are able to consume, whether that be that popcorn, that non-GMO white corn. You're seeing a lot of young couples start their cow herd and try to market their beef directly under their farm name. And COVID really sparked a lot of that, with just when we couldn't get access to, we were running into the meat shortage there at the grocery stores. I've been amazed at how many young families I see now trying to market their own beef products and stuff. And so I think you are starting to see with the younger generation, they want to be more of that farm to table type, I guess, agriculture a little bit. I mean, you still are going to have your general farm where you're going to have your corn, soybeans, and sometimes that might be the main thing that provides that income. But then you are starting to see younger people be innovative. I guess I'd call it that entrepreneurship spirit, and you're seeing a lot more of that. And so I think, going forward, I have some friends that they've said they've gone to some lenders, and some lenders will give them an opportunity. And then some lenders are like, nope, we're not going to touch that. And I think that comes down to, even back to the question before, how do you start that conversation about the knife program? I really would encourage anyone, at least go talk to your lender, your local bank, and find out, one, what they know about the program, and then two, what their experience has been. And then three, if you have a good relationship with that lender already, they're more likely going to take the chance with you and go through that journey with you. So relationships are huge in agriculture anymore, whether it's renting farms. It's I always say my team is my banker, my accountant, your attorney, your landlords, your agronomist. I mean, you have a whole team around you, trying to hopefully make you successful at the end of the day. But agriculture is definitely changing, and it is exciting to see some of the new things, the new paths people are taking. It's not just your traditional corn, soybeans anymore, or just your typical cow-calf herd.
Yeah, and I guess I would add, on a widespread or wide scale basis, the vast majority of what we see is still your traditional, in our area, it's corn and beans and a few pockets of wheat and maybe some milo here and there. But yes, we're certainly, I think there's been a lot more brainstorming going on than there probably was 20 years ago, and a lot more people looking at, hey, what are ways that I can complement what I'm already doing? And I think to a certain degree, there's also some long-term concerns out there about the longevity of the ag market, and with it's a global market, and there's so many things out of our control, and if your margins are really getting squeezed down on what you've normally been doing, there's a lot of people looking at, hey, I'm gonna have to, if I'm gonna stay viable and competitive, I might need to expand my horizons, and not just keep doing what we've always done. And Lance is right. There's going to be a certain amount of pushback in the lending community and the financial community on that. And I think things will progress and things will develop. And I think the lenders want to see that done at a bankable pace or a bankable rate. But yeah, there's certainly there's certainly lots of brainstorming and research and people experimenting with different, whether it be, going organic or raising, like Lance said, non-GMO white, or doing something that's, at least for us in this area, might seem totally off the wall, raising hops or is it aronia berries, or I'm going to get into things I don't know about. Yeah, so I think those things are coming. I think you'll see a lot of that when the markets cycle, and when you get into a time where the margins and the prospects on your traditional products are really getting squeezed down. That's when people really start looking at is this really viable for me long term, or do I need to look at what else is out there, in the ag realm.
Okay, let's talk net worth limits for a moment. That next gen farm rental program has a $200,000 net worth limit, which many people feel is woefully low. Our own NIFA program, Beginning Farmer Rancher program, has a $500,000 net worth limit, and it's been that for a long, long time. Our neighbors next door in Iowa, who are the largest user of the Beginning Farmer Rancher program, the Aggie Bond program, it's called, the mirror image of what we do here. They have a lot more volume going on. They have a net worth limit of 737,000 right now, and it's been indexed to inflation. Do you feel net worth limits should be raised because it'd be more reflecting reality, or do you not want them raised, or how do you feel about the net worth limits that are on these programs?
I would, from my standpoint, and I don't know what the exact dollar amount should be. My knee-jerk reaction would be to say, well, I would think we should be competitive with our neighbors. If we're you hear that all the time, trying to keep young people in Nebraska, trying to keep our workforce in Nebraska, and that applies to ag as well. We want to keep our young people here and keep people coming back to the farm. So I don't know what the exact dollar amount should be, but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to raising those limits. I've had plenty of borrowers who actually we start the conversation. We say, oh, have you looked at this? And then you sit down and crunch the numbers, and you find that, oh, you're $50,000 over the limit. We can add a little deferred tax liability, but that only goes so far. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to raising those limits.
I would add from the farmer perspective, and I think this last year on a couple beginning farmer programs, I know Nebraska Farm Bureau lobbied in the state legislature to raise some of the limits when it comes to net worth for some of the different programs as it relates to beginning young farmers and ranchers, because agriculture is changing. I mean, if you look at the amount of capital that's coming in and coming out, this year, last year were pretty good years for farmers. Even a young farmer getting started, within a couple of years, your net worth can change dramatically depending on what the farm economy is doing, what the commodity prices are doing. And then I think we have to ask ourselves, well, if we don't raise the net worth, then who are we limiting? Are we really then helping young farmers, ranchers get established? Because, unless you're diving into it right away, that's about the only time you could take advantage of that. Because over time, hopefully your net worth is going to grow, and that should be acknowledged as a good thing for a young farmer and rancher to see their net worth growing. So I think with it, as Neil said, I don't know what the exact number is. It needs to be equitable for everyone. But at the same time, we also need to be living within the times we are in now, and with inflation, with just the cost of everything going up, I think we do need to address that, or we are going to limit who can actually take advantage of these programs, and that pool's going to get smaller and smaller.
Okay, it's an area I think we might be working on for our own program. Jill, what kind of mix are you seeing, male, female, as far as your ag program curriculums?
Yeah, it's definitely trending more and more females feeling comfortable and welcomed in getting degrees in agriculture. Right now, I guess we're 40-60, still more male. I think your typical four-year university, they're getting closer to a 50-50 mix, but we're probably still 40-60. I would have to look at that for sure, but that's my sense when I look out at a classroom right now.
Okay, it's even higher than I would have realized it was.
Yeah, it's definitely changed less, and I think COVID really accelerated that trend for some reason. I've heard explanations that males have opportunities for higher paying jobs like construction and things like that with the current job market that they took advantage of, whereas women had less opportunities, and they really had to look at getting a degree to increase their opportunities. So I think we did see a bump because of COVID.
Okay, I myself just have one final question, and it's basically directed right at Lance. And it's kind of a shameless plug for NIFA. Every year, we give $25,000 to both FFA and 4-H in the form of a Governor's Agricultural Excellence Award. So I just wondered, Lance, what FFA chapter were you in? And do you remember if you ever did apply for and win our award? You're muted.
Yes, I did. I'm from the Blue Hill FFA chapter, and I remember hearing, because at state convention we'd walk across with the big old NIFA banner, and so yes, our chapter did apply for. I can't remember specifically the years I was in, what kind of what we applied for in regards to that, but we did. And so, and on behalf of the Nebraska FFA Foundation, a former member, we really do appreciate all the support NIFA provides on that, because that's actually, I knew about NIFA before I even applied for my beginning farmer loan. So that went back to high school. So, and hopefully to that point, as we were talking about education, Jill was talking about that, high school, are the students coming through high school, as they're starting to look towards those careers in agriculture. I mean, NIFA really, we need to make sure they know about these programs, because I kind of knew about it after college. And the sooner they know about it, the sooner they can start planning to start taking advantage of these programs, and kind of get their thought process on, what do I want to do for a career? And if I want to farm, want to start my herd of cattle, or start a hop farm or whatever, oh, hey, I remember NIFA, I need to look into this. So
What we want to hear. Does anybody have any final comments on anything? Okay. Then that completes this installment of Webinar Wednesdays. I'd like to thank everyone for attending, especially today's presenters. And this webinar was recorded along with all previous webinars, is available on our YouTube channel at NIFA Housing. You can find a link on our website, nifa.org, under Community Development Trainings and Webinars. Again, thank you, everyone, and everybody have a great rest of your week.